Well, I got some bad news about this 1970 Mercedes 280 SE. I was driving it, I want to say back in October actually, and felt a really bad vibration and shaking, and saw smoke coming from the rear tire, and it looks like the left rear caliper on this thing is completely seized. And it was rubbing so bad, the rotor in here was cherry red, glowing orange, with all kinds of crackling sounds and stuff, molten stuff falling down on the ground. So I have no idea what I'm going to find under here when I get this tire off, but let me go ahead and do that and see how bad the carnage is. Well, it's not looking good. This stuff got so incredibly hot, the brake pads are completely cooked. You can see that these used to be EBC green stuff, and they, of course, are no longer green. The paint's all charred and crackly and black, and all the resins in the pad have boiled off. The pads actually look a little bit better than I thought they would, but they're basically ruined. That's all that white stuff is ash from the resins that bind all the components together. Which is a shame, because I had a lot of life left on those pads. And the rotor, believe it or not, is not in too bad a shape. I can't turn it all the way around because I have the other tire on the ground, and so it's basically locked. And I do see wetness around one of the pistons, brake fluid leaking out. So the seal is basically completely cooked and ruptured, as you can see inside there. So that caliper is completely gone. It might be rebuildable if I could find a rebuild kit, but it's going to have to come off the car nonetheless. And these calipers, new or rebuilt, are about $350 each, believe it or not. 42-year-old car, they don't really sell a whole lot of them. But, and hopefully I don't have to get a new rotor, although rotors are fairly inexpensive, about $60. And I think I smell what I believe to be gear oil, so I hope that the seal behind here for the wheel bearing was not destroyed at the same time that the rotor overheated and got red. But I might try one thing if I can get away with it. And over here in the woods behind the F-250 here, I have a parts car. I have a 1972 Mercedes 280 SE, completely rotted out, of course grown in. I bought, gosh, 7 or 8 years ago for $500. Everyone should have bamboo growing through the engine compartment. It's got the same engine, only it's got more emissions junk on it. It's a 2.8 fuel injected straight line or inline 6, but they took the injection pump off of it. Unfortunately, you can see all the connections for the injection pump there. That's the main reason why I got it, for the injection pump, but oh well. But there's still plenty of good parts on it. The engine's completely locked. They said that coolant got down into one of the cylinders from a bad head gasket, and the guy never fixed it, and the coolant, being in the cylinders for that length of time, just rusted the cylinders out, so now the engine won't run. It's definitely rebuildable. It's got a good cam, good bottom end, that kind of stuff, so it's still good, and it's got a good transmission in it, so it wasn't a complete waste of money. And a good York 2-cylinder compressor over there, and a good rad on the front. But in the back, that's what I want to focus attention on. Of course, the interior is completely gone. All the wood trim is messed up. It's got a fairly good instrument cluster, but whoever took it apart to get the window motors out was not very easy on the car, for sure. But it looks like in 72 they use the same brake calipers, so I might be able to somehow get this old rusted wheel off of here and get this caliper off and hope and pray that that caliper is usable. This car's just got tons of rut. There are no rocker panels on it anymore, so this car can never be roadworthy again. It's the testament to driving on salty roads and not taking care of it. That's what these cars, unfortunately, generally look like when they get this old. But everything else is good. It's got good stationary glass. This one had a rear defogger, which mine doesn't have, so that's good. And it's got a good windshield, so there's still some good parts on it. But this car is never going to be on the road again. So let me see if I can get that floor jack back here and jack this up and see what I got going on back there. See if that caliper is going to help me out. Well, we got the tire off of the Junker 72 280 SE, and you can tell everything is just heavily corroded and rusted. And got all the bolts loose finally, and as well as the brake lines, using this special flare nut tool to get that off. And I wanted to save this brake line, and what ends up happening on old cars like that is it gets rust and corrosion between the fastener and the line, and you'll twist the line off. So I just had to work with it for a while and take a wire brush and just scrub all around that, and then soak it down in penetrating oil and just take that wrench and work it back and forth while using the other hand to hold that line steady so it doesn't twist off. And I finally got that sucker out of there. So I can also use that brake line in the future if I really need to, but hopefully I won't. And I don't know if you can see, but right here my finger is, there are two bolts, one on the top, one on the bottom, and they were a booger to get off as well too, being that how the car is really old. But the caliper is loose, it's ready to come off. I'm not sure what kind of condition it's in, if it'll meet my quality standards. I mean, this caliper might be just as seized up as the one on the good car. I can't get the brake pads out of there, and I'm hoping it's because they are basically welded to the rotor, or corroded to the rotor. I can't take my pliers and squeeze the pads away from the rotor. So that's a little bit concerning, but I'm already halfway into it, so let me go ahead and see if I can get this caliper off here and get this into the daylight and see what we're working with. It's going to be pretty tough to get that off because it's basically seized to the rotor. But a little bit of breaker bar persuasion goes a long way. And just as a word of caution, if you're working on cars like this, you don't want to get your body under here, because all I have supporting it is a jack stand, which has now gone halfway through the rusted floor, which is nice. So I lost a couple of inches just because of that. This thing is just a piece of junk. But it does have some good parts on this, and I might actually want to, while I'm at it, get that fuel pump out of there and see if I can clean that up, get all the old gas out of it, and put it on the shelf for a rainy day. But back to the task at hand. Let's see if I can get this guy off of here. Well, she came off with a fight, but I ended up winning the fight, so I got the caliper nice and free. And there's a little bit of brake fluid in there, so let's go ahead and dump that out and kind of get an initial assessment of what kind of condition everything's in. Huh. Absolutely dry. That doesn't make any... Yeah, I saw one little drop come out. That doesn't make any sense at all. Well, the next thing to do is to get these two pads out of here and just hope that... That's a heavy part, that's like 10 pounds. Get the pads out of here and hope that I can spread these pistons back and forth easily. That'll be the telltale sign. It's a lot of work to do to get the caliper off of there just for that purpose, but that's really the best way to find out. That way I can get a nice C-clamp on there with a good even pressure to force the piston back so it doesn't get cocked in the bore. And we'll see what we're dealing with here. Well, the work continues. Using the C-clamp to force the pistons back, I was able, after a lot of effort, to go ahead and force them back. And as I did so, some brake fluid came spurting out, which is a good sign. The seals are not in the best shape in the world. They look like they're the original seals, but they're in a lot better shape than what's on the car now. And what I was trying to do is use some compressed air in the fitting for the brake line to push the pistons back out so I can kind of work them back and forth and get rid of any kind of ridge that might be in here or corrosion or anything like that. And I just don't have enough air pressure even with 150 pounds. So I think that it's worth a shot to go ahead and connect it to the car and bleed the system, or at least this one caliper, and get all the air out of it, and then use the added force of the hydraulic fluid in the car to move these pistons back and forth and see what I have. I could do that on the caliper that's on the car already, the original caliper, but the seals are so far gone, there really isn't much point. I might have better luck with these seals. Okay, now I got both calipers out, and the one on the bottom is the original one off the car, and you can see just how eaten away that seal is around the piston. They're just totally gone. I think that's the side that originally got hot because of all the rust and further damage. And I was able to force the pistons back into their bore without too much effort. Actually, much less effort than on the caliper from the old car. But I found something quite interesting that's going to have to be investigated further. And just like on the junker car back there, there's absolutely no fluid coming out of that line right there. And I already got air in the system anyway from cracking the line open. I even stood on that brake pedal and no fluid would come out. So somewhere along the line there is probably a clog or some kind of obstruction. So to figure out where that is, I went on the other side and just basically tried to bleed the brake caliper on this side. You can see the EBC green pad, what it's supposed to look like there. Just like on all cars, it has a bleeder screw right here. And I just applied 10 pounds of pressure with the same brake bleeder that I have been using on the master cylinder back there. And sure enough, I had fluid coming out of there. So I know that the problem is somewhere back here and not in the master cylinder or the line going all the way down through the car. You can tell I haven't driven the car very much because of the brake problem, because of the rotors being corroded a little bit. And I have another problem that I discovered after I pulled off the rotor. Just like on modern cars, the parking brake shoes are actually inside the rotor, inside the little top hat portion of the rotor, and it's basically covered in gear oil. So I'm going to have to replace the axle shaft seal back there at some point. I'm not really sure how fast it's leaking, or if that leak started because of the rotor getting hot, or what the deal is, but that's going to have to be replaced, and of course the parking brake shoes replaced. So this whole left side of the car is all screwed up. There's a lot of corrosion on that line actually, because it's just been so dry for so long. So what I think I'll do is put that all back together, put the caliper from the junk car on there and get it loosely put together, and then work on trying to find out why I don't have any pressure coming out of that line. But parts always fail for a reason, I've learned. And the brakes on this car have been taken care of. They've been bled periodically, but I didn't know that this line was clogged up. So since that caliper wasn't getting any movement for such a long time and not any protection from the brake fluid, it basically corroded inside just enough to seize against that rotor and cause the problem. So the root of the problem, I think, is a clog in this line, which had a cascading effect of not being able to use the caliper. The caliper got corroded, and that had the effect of creating a lot of heat and possibly messing up the rotor. So it's like a domino effect, but I think that I've got the root of the problem here somewhere. Probably that junction in there on the axle or something, or a kinked rubber hose. But shouldn't be too hard to figure out, and I'll let you know what I come up with. Well, I'm happy to say I've found the root of the problem. What you're looking at right now is fluid dripping out from that portion of this fitting here that feeds the driver's side rear wheel. This side feeds the right side, or passenger side rear wheel, and then this line going in here is the feed from the master cylinder. And you got a nice steady drip coming out there, and I had a steady stream coming out via 10 pounds of pressure from the power brake bleeder, so that tool is really coming in handy, not just to bleed the brake system, but to also troubleshoot. So what we end up having is a collapsed hose, unfortunately. This looks like the original hose to the car. That was the end that went into the fitting on the body of the car, and this is the end that transitions to the hard brake line on the top of the axle. And with I don't know if I can do this with one hand, but I've got about 120 pounds of air through here. I use my knee to push down on it. You can hardly hear anything. Here's what it sounds like without the hose. But if I do this, nothing comes out that end. I hear some hissing where my hand is, so I can't hold it too tight. But this hose, being 42 years old, is all collapsed inside and causing the restriction in flow, which eventually took out the caliper because there is no movement in there anymore, and so those pistons were stuck there for God knows how long, and no fresh brake fluid circulating in there to carry away any contamination, so that got sacrificed. They do make rebuild kits for this. I might go ahead and replace the seals and stuff inside there, but I've got the other caliper on there just to see if I'll get more life out of that. Worst comes to worst, I'll just have to break down and buy new calipers. That's going to be expensive, but next thing on the list, I guess, is to see if I can find another one of these, or head back to that junker Mercedes back there behind the F-250 and see what kind of shape its hose is in. Well, I've still got a bit of work to do on this car. I did what I call exploratory surgery, trying to figure out the root cause of why that brake rotor was cherry red about a month and a half ago. And I need a new rear flexible brake hose, and I've got some decisions to make. I can either go with the caliper I took off of the junked car back there and probably be okay for a while, or I can spend a lot of money and get a new caliper, maybe a pair of calipers for the left and right hand side, and a pair of brake hoses for the right and left hand side. If I had my druthers, I'd rather go ahead and just redo the whole rear end of the car. 2 new calipers, 2 new brake hoses, bleed and flush the system, and get it back to OEM spec. That's going to be really expensive, about $350 per side, just for the calipers alone, if I can even get the brake hoses. So I've got a little bit of Googling to do on that, see what kind of options I have to get that done, as well as look at the axle shaft seal. And since it seems to be bad on that side, it's probably bad on the passenger side as well too. But in the meantime, since the car has not been driven in a long time, or even started up in a long time, I've got it running right now. I'm going to go ahead and leave it running, let it completely warm up, and just kind of circulate the fluids and everything, maybe go into drive, go backwards and forwards just a little bit, just to kind of give a little bit of a workout. It's not good for them to sit around for a long period of time, so I want to definitely make sure that I keep the thing running nice and strong. So I think I'll call this one part 1 of the 280 SC brake caliper problem, and probably end up making a part 2 about this car, hopefully within the next 2 weeks, whenever I can source the parts for it.